You're not going to introduce me, your favorite dude in the world? I always say nice things about you. Guess we better go to the marriage conference, work it out. One other quick announcement. This little flyer you see around the house here, it just says food and fun and fellowship. It's like, yo, I'm in. Oh, wait, it's just for dudes. Sorry, ladies. It should say dudes only. Bowling night, fly fishing, and whatnot. So anyway, the guys are wanting to get all you guys in fellowship, like connected, like let's have fun together, let's get to know each other. So these are just different opportunities to do that. So ladies, just so you know, you're not invited. And I did wear, it's 3 days in mourning, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday this week. I came out and decided I would wear green. And so glad that we could make the world happy. Anyway, good to be with you. Visitors, got to meet a few of you. Yeah, kicking the tires. Welcome to Outlook. This is us trying to do what God, like connect with God and walk our life together through this journey that we call life, and not just keep God sort of as a sidebar or throw him on as a bumper sticker, but really if God exists, if God's real, let's get to know him, right? That's what he wants. So that's who we're about. That's what we're about. So welcome. So we're starting a new series without a microphone this week. And there it is. We're going to play with your head. It's called Nothing New Under the Sun. And the purpose is that we might understand how people of God, people that believe in God, what happens in our relationship and our walk with God that we continually get detoured or distracted, or we tank our faith. We start strong, but that we don't finish like we hear today, but maybe next year or later on this year, something else will come up in your life and you won't be here anymore, kind of thing, right? It's like, what happens to us that we don't stay long and strong, that we don't finish the race, that we don't stay on the straight and narrow, that there's too many slippery slopes or detours or distractions? And so nothing new under the sun. What we go through, you and me, what will happen this year in your life has happened before in others' lives. And so the question is, what can we learn from them? So we've been in a series for since fall, diving deep into the Old Covenant, the Old Testament of the Bible, and learning from the stories different things about God, his nature, his character. Then we look at Jesus and why he actually came, not just to save us, but also to reveal who God is, because your thoughts on God are the most important thoughts you have. From your thoughts on God come every other activity, action, decision that you make subconsciously, and you don't know that, but that's the truth. It's what you believe about reality of life. And so we're going to dig a little deep. I'm going to open this series up here called The Pursuit of Nothing New Under the Sun. We have this phrase in our Declaration of Independence, actually, and it says this, that I'll read it from mine. Mine has a little bit more. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they're endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights. Among these are liberty, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Now, this phrase, the pursuit of happiness, is what we're going to be talking about today, because I think one of the major flaws in our walk with God is that we get easily distracted by this pursuit of happiness. Now, what the original phrase meant, it came from earlier documents before it was added to the Declaration of Independence. It meant that you would have the ability, the right to pursue your own dreams, your own goals, your career path, your employment. Like, I get to choose for myself, not the government telling me who I have to be and what I have to do. That you get the ability given by God to pursue what he's called you to, what he created you for. That's what the phrase means. My contention is that over the 200 years since then, is that maybe we've redefined that. We've misinterpreted that phrase to mean whatever makes me happy, whatever feels good, do it. And if it doesn't make me happy, if I find myself unhappy, then it's easy to discard my wife, my kids, my career just for pursuing what I feel I want to do to make me happy. And so this pursuit of happiness becomes this chasing of our tail, becomes looking for the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow, and we're never going to find it, and we find ourselves always sort of schizophrenic in our pursuits, casting off things that are good, that are right, that are healthy, that are holy, in this pursuit of what we consider to be our happiness. And so I want to challenge that. As I said, we're starting a new series, and one of the things that we're going to look at today, and then we're going to look at subsequent things throughout the Old Testament that caused Israel time and time again to fail in staying true to God and their commitment to God and what was a covenant that they made freely with God. And under that covenant, if you understand that, when we have a New Testament, a new covenant that God has made with us to freely accept the terms and the promises through the Son Jesus, recognizing him as a Messiah, wanting to receive what he offers us and walk in fellowship and relationship with him. And so we have these two covenants, we have two people of God, and we have struggles staying true, staying the course. The first one today is we're going to look at the pursuit of pleasure, the pursuit of happiness, as being one of those distractors that we often have to arm wrestle with and decide how we're going to go, because we come to forks in the road. I'm not happy, like today. Why? What am I going to do about it? Well, I'm going to go find my happiness. So most people that fall into this syndrome wouldn't be here today, except that they didn't find it. And so they came back. They said, I think God has a little more for me than what I discovered the first time around. And so I'm back to find out, Lord, how do I find true joy, true peace, what you said you would give me an abundant life. You offer it to me in the covenant. Seek first my kingdom, my righteousness, and everything else is dominoes. He says, I know your name, I know your needs before you even ask, and I am committed to your well-being, to what's good. But we have trouble trusting that, right? So, God in his sovereignty, like I said, just recorded and kept a record of the stories of Israel and their failures, written down for us, 1 Corinthians 10. I wanted to read it again for you, and this is why we're doing this series, and this is what we need to understand from it. Go ahead to the 1 Corinthians passage next, please. Brothers and sisters, I want you to know that what happened to Israel, to our ancestors who followed Moses, I want you to know they were all, just like us, they were under a cloud that led them through the desert. They went through the Red Sea. They were all baptized as followers of Moses in the cloud and in the sea. They all ate the same spiritual food and drank the same spiritual drink. This is Paul now in 1 Corinthians telling them, like us, they were committed to God. They were baptized into Christ. They drank from the same spiritual rock that followed them, and that rock was Christ. But God was not pleased with most of them. Interesting. Okay, why? And then many of them died in the desert as a result. The things that happened, these things happened as examples for us, to stop us, to help us, if we would learn from the past, from wanting evil things as they did. These things happened to them as examples and were written down as warnings for us, on whom the culmination of the ages has come. So if you think you're standing firm, be careful that these things don't happen to you this year, next year, the year after, that you don't start and find yourself somewhere out wandering in the wilderness, looking for happiness in all the wrong places, right? Making poor choices, not trusting in God to bring you what you truly seek, what your soul longs for. And so that's really why many of us are here. If you're new, it's because we've been out there, we've done that, and we didn't find what we were looking for. And we gave God a chance. We're experiencing something that our soul longed for, which was meaning and truth and purpose and real joy and peace that surpasses everybody's understanding. It's like it's in his presence with his promises for us. So that's the journey we're on, and we invite you to join us on that journey. So this pursuit of happiness issue, right? It's nothing new. it began really in the garden, and maybe you missed this, but God kind of highlighted it this week. Adam and Eve in the garden, this began day one when we started a relationship with God, right? He created us in his image. He put us in the garden. He walked in the garden with us. We had fellowship with God. Guess what? Did we have any problems? Nope. Was there any sickness? Nope. Did we have enough to eat? Yep. We have everything do we have something to do? Purpose in life? Yeah. Fellowship, walk with God. We got to name the animals. We got to name the trees. We got to eat from anything in the garden. It's yours. But I'm going to give you a choice. Don't eat from that one. Just the one. Just the one. 10,000, knock yourself out. Right? Eat as much as you want. But I got to give you a choice so you're not robots. So there's one. Now you have a choice. Just don't eat from the one. Here's what it says about the one. Right? It says in Genesis 3:6, when the woman saw that the fruit of the tree was good for food, that looks yummy. It was pleasing to the eye. I like the color. It smells good, it looks good, and it was also desirable for gaining wisdom. So it was called the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. You remember that? All they knew up to this point was good. There's something called evil. We don't know what that's about. Maybe we'll go eat that fruit, and that'll give us an experience that we haven't had. All we've experienced is goodness, and joy, and peace, and harmony with God. So curiosity, right, wins the day, and this desire, right? They saw that it was good, pleasing to the eye, pleasing. It's like, it's going to give me something that I don't have, or at least promises to give me something. And it delivered. You got to experience evil. Thank you very much, Eve. And Adam. Yeah, he was, and he gave it to her husband, who was where? Yeah. Wimp. And he ate it too. All right? So it's been from the beginning that we live in this area of somehow the enemy gets us to feel discontent with what God gives us, with what we have. And it comes through jealousy, it comes through envy. It's the Kool-Aid of the marketing industry, right? To make you discontent with what you have so they can sell you what you don't have. So it's supposed to promise you and make you more who you want to be and give you the happiness that you seek and that you're entitled to, that you deserve, because of the Declaration of Independence and the misunderstanding thereof. And so we too bite the apple, right? But it doesn't start with the bite. It starts with what goes on in here and upstairs when we start believing that what God has for us isn't good enough. That there's something better out there, that God doesn't have my best interest. I'm not happy, I'm not content, and the enemy produces that in us first. And then he holds a carrot out and he says, now, this is what's going to make you happy. And we bite and we find that it didn't. I'm so tempted right now to just pause and to throw in some scenarios, right? How many of us have made poor choices chasing something we thought we wanted, and to discover that was a bad choice? In fact, that didn't give me what I thought it was going to be, something different. When I signed up for that, whatever it was, I was hoping, and it didn't turn out that way. And then we kick ourselves in the tail, and the enemy jumps on the bandwagon and produces guilt and shame in your life, and you're such an idiot, and you're so stupid. How could you do that? And so he gets us coming, eat the carrot, and then when we do, he gets us going, and he says, you're pitiful, you're dumb, you're a mess. And he plays with our head. And so we fall prey to many things that lead us off the path that God has for us. The one where he said to Israel, remember, he goes, well, he said to Adam and Eve, he goes, man, this is going to be good. I don't know how long they lived in the garden before this happened, right? We don't know that. It didn't take Israel 40 days for Moses to go up on the mountain to get the 10 Commandments before they're making an idol. And it was done in 40 days. It's like, I don't know how long it makes to get a bunch of gold and melt it and make something, and then more than a day, I expect. So it's like, but something has to, it begins right here inside of us, and then it gets us to do something. And so we're going to go through some scenarios, but we want to learn from wisdom, right? So let me just say this. The end result of Adam and Eve's choice, and the end result of our short-sighted, quick fix decisions to chase or pursue our own happiness outside of God's will, always ends not in life, liberty, or fulfillment, or happiness, but they end in bondage, right? Disobedience to God always results in death, bondage, and regret. We get discontent, which is marketing, and then the bait, we bite the apple. So let me add a layer, right? I'm going to play with your head a little bit. Since I got depressed on Sunday after the game, I'm going to bring you all into my depression here for the next 2 minutes, and I'm going to throw another layer on top of this, right? And then we're going to look at a third layer, which is Solomon in the book of Ecclesiastes, and then we're going to end this thing on what God says and what we need to do. So you may have experienced this. It's kind of the life I live and the world we live in, and what I hear, the stories we hear and stuff like that. We spend our youth as young people. If you're young in the room today, this is where we start. We spend our youth dreaming of adventure, of changing the world, making it a better place. Only possibly and most probably to get down the road and wonder why. Was it worth the effort and the sacrifice? Nobody really cares and nobody really wants to change. And those who profess that they do are just as greedy and corrupt as the ones who we want to overthrow. That's fun. Parents give themselves to their kids and to their development. Everything the kid could ever want, we sacrifice for them, only to have them end up hating you. They disrespect you because you're old and stuck in the past, homophobic and racist. Some say everything's getting worse. I'm worried that there won't be a U.S. for my kids or my grandkids. No, everything's getting better. Soon we'll eradicate capitalism, socialism, fairness, equality, and love will prevail. Anyone on the extremes is paranoid, and fear and division is the Kool-Aid they drink. Everyone in the middle is concerned, but most bury their heads in the sand. The thinker sees all of this and looks back through the lens of history and time and our current experience and wonders, is there anything worth living for? Is there anything new under the sun? Everything goes on it has before. Kingdoms rise and kingdoms fall. Power and greed rule the masses, even today. What was will be again. What is has already been before. There's nothing new under the sun. Everything is meaningless, a chasing after the wind. Now that you all feel better, let's go home. Has anyone ever felt that way? Either on the front end or the back end, right? We've all been there at some point in time in our lives where we question the existential question, what is the meaning of life? What is the purpose of life? Why are we here? Is there any meaning or purpose to it all? Why do we get up every day and go through the grind? Is it like, what is this all about? More and more of the population ends up here at some point in their life. After chasing things like pleasure and power and fortune and fame, we end up disillusioned, empty, and alone, wondering what was the purpose or the meaning of all our striving under the sun. So what's the answer? Well, let's learn from a guy who had it all, right? Ecclesiastes, Solomon. Solomon was the son of David. David established God's kingdom after the first king, Saul. Then that was a people's choice. God's choice was David. And he established a dynasty, Israel and Judah, united kingdom, great king. And then, because he was a man of war and God said, it's not for yours to build a temple, so his son Solomon built a temple. And at the beginning of Solomon's life, God says, what do you want me to do for you in your kingdom and during your reign? And he said, I want wisdom to govern your people. And God says, I'm pleased with your request. I will not only give you wisdom more than anybody else on the planet, but I'll give you riches, wealth, and fame and power as well. So Solomon takes the throne, and he is actually given all that God promised him. Considered at that point in time the richest man in the world, not just considered, but actually, and the wisest man in the world. Other kingdoms would come. I mean, if you read the story of Solomon, his servants were more well-to-do than any rich man in any other kingdom. And so they would come and they would, how do you do that? He would feed 5,000 people a day, and every day. Like that was his, just eat with me. It was like incredible, his kingdom. He built things, and he had all the wisdom in the world. He had zoology and plantology, what do they call that? Agricultural. I mean, he did things that nobody else understood how to do. He brought plants in from all over the world and seeds. He built dams and reservoirs and watered them. His kingdom was huge and flourishing, and he was a man. And as a king, he had all the authority to do whatever he did. And so he did as much as he could with his wisdom. He almost went crazy, but he didn't. He said, I'm going to test everything because I have this existential question. What is the purpose of life? You want to read a little bit? Let's find out what he has to say and try and learn from history here. And then we'll find out what God says. So chapter 1, I'm just going to go through. There's 12 chapters. We're not going to read them all. We're going to read just portions. Here's the words of the teacher, the son of David, the king in Jerusalem. Meaningless, says the teacher. Utterly meaningless, everything in life is meaningless. What do people gain from all their labor at which they toil under the sun? Generations come and generations go, but the earth remains forever. What has been will be again. What has been done will be done again. There's nothing new under the sun. In other words, what we face today, they faced. What you face, somebody else has faced. Somebody else will face the same thing you're facing. You're not alone in your endeavor, your journey, or your misery, or your whatever, your pursuit and temptations. Others have faced it, and we're to learn from them. Chapter 2, he says, I said to myself, come, I will test you. Come now, I will test you, saying to himself, with pleasure, to find out what is good. I got all the money in the world. I got all the power in the world. I got all the freedom in the world. I can do whatever I want. So I'm going to go do everything I want. Anything that comes to my mind, anything that comes to my heart, whatever the world says is good, fun, exciting, you need to have the fastest chariot, now you need to have 10 of those fastest chariots, and he did. So he chased it. He chased everything that we think is valuable. He says, but that also proved to be meaningless. Laughter, I said, is madness. It's just there for a moment, and then the next day I'm complaining about something. And what does pleasure accomplish? I tried cheering myself with wine and embracing folly, my mind still guiding me with wisdom. I wanted to see what was good for people to do under the heavens during the few days of their lives. So I undertook a great project. I built houses for myself. I planted vineyards. I made gardens and parks, and I planted all kinds of fruit trees in them. I made reservoirs to water the groves of flourishing trees. I bought male and female slaves and had other slaves who were born into my house. I also owned more herds and flocks than anyone else in Jerusalem before me. I amassed silver and gold for myself, the treasure of kings and provinces. I acquired male and female singers. Yeah, and I had a harem as well. The delights of a man's heart. I had everything that everybody ever wanted. I became greater by far than anyone in Jerusalem before me or after me. In all this, my wisdom stayed with me. I kept a level head and I kept searching for where there was truth. I denied myself nothing my eyes desire. I refused my heart no pleasure. My heart took delight in all the labor that I was doing as I was searching. And this was my reward for all my toil. That I got to enjoy it, actually. Yet when I surveyed all that my hands had done and what I had toiled to achieve, like looking for meaning and purpose in the stuff, everything was meaningless, a chasing after the wind. Nothing was gained under the sun. I saw that wisdom is better than folly, just as light is better than darkness, but I came to realize that the same fate overtakes both, the wise and the fool. Then I said to myself, the fate of the fool will overtake me also. We're both going to die. What then will I gain by all my wisdom? This too is meaningless. And this is one of the questions that we have as we search to change the world. Again, I looked and I saw the oppression, right? Like, let's make the world a better place. I looked at all the oppression going on in the world, and I said, let me try and fix that. I saw the tears of the oppressed. They have no comforter. Powers on the side of the oppressor, and the oppressed have no comforter. And I declared, man, poor guys. The dead who had already died are happier than the living who are suffering. But better than both is the one who's never been born, who's never seen the evil under the sun, that is done under the sun. Now, this is all depressing, right? Because it's like, but yet it shouldn't be depressing. It should be instructional. Like, I want to learn from this, right? And it's God put it here in the words so that I would learn from it, that we would learn from it, that we wouldn't spend our lives chasing things. Because we say to ourselves in our subconscious, if not consciously, right? Man, if I just had more. If I just could do that. Oh, if I had what he had, what she had. If I didn't have to worry about what I have to worry about. We always put ourselves in a scenario that it's not our current reality. And we say, if, then I'd be happy. And it's like, well, would you? Is that the source? Is that stuff, does that produce happiness? And so this is the journey that Solomon's on. He had all of that, and he said, no. Don't waste your time trying to find meaning and purpose in things or pursuing pleasure and happiness, because it's not going to produce for you what you're searching for. And he comes to some conclusions that we'll get to, and then we'll get into what Jesus says about all this. But it's good, let me just say this, to question things. It's good to question the meaning of life, the purpose of life. When we're young, we all start doing it innately somehow. We start asking the question, is this all there has ever been? Is there meaning and purpose in this? The way mom and dad taught me, is that true? Is that right? And these are good questions to ask, because you got to find your own faith. You got to go on your own journey of discovery. I pray only that you would use wisdom and that you would learn from others. Because others have been where you're at, ask the same questions, and come to some conclusions. So young man, young woman in the room, college student, yeah, question things, because we don't continue to repeat mistakes of the past, right? We don't want to keep just making errors and not learning from them. This is now a situation where you need to ask questions, but then you need to open your eyes and say, God, would you give me wisdom so that I might discern rightly? And I don't have to go down the path of Solomon. I don't have to spend the next 30 or 40 years chasing something that's not going to produce what I hope to find in life. What is life about? It's a good question to ask. Is the Bible true? What about all the other world religions? These are good questions to ask. Go find the answer, right? Use wisdom, listen, read, talk to others. Because until you come to the conclusion of the matter for yourself and find life, that it's truly life, you'll always be somewhat disillusioned, disappointed, and chasing something that you might not ever get to. And you'll waste your life. Heavy stuff. So these questions and the search will eventually lead us to the same place that it led Solomon, or potentially worse, to a dead-end road. For without a God who defines what is real and what is meaningful and what is worth living for, we will end up lost in our search. So here's Solomon's conclusion, and before he comes to the final conclusion at the last chapter. So I hated my life. I hated life. He goes, this is crazy. Because the work that is done under the sun was grievous to me. I couldn't figure out the reason. All of it's meaningless, chasing after the wind. I hated all the things I had toiled for under the sun because I looked for happiness and truth and meaning and purpose, and I couldn't find any. And I must leave them. Everything that I accomplished, I got to leave to somebody else. And who knows whether that person will be wise or foolish. Yet they will have control over all the fruit of my toil, in which I poured my effort and skill under the sun. This is craziness. So my heart began to despair. This is where it will lead us. Over all the toilsome labor that I've done, that I've given my life for under the sun. For a person may labor with wisdom, knowledge, and skill, and then they got to leave it all to another who has not toiled for it. And that guy just may be a fool and squander it all. This too is meaningless, a great misfortune. What do people gain, or what do they get for the toil and the anxious striving for which they labor under the sun? All their days, all their work is grief and pain. Even at night they can't rest. This too is meaningless. So this existential question that I encourage you to embrace and seek, but that I encourage you to apply wisdom and knowledge and history and the learning of others in your pursuit, in your questioning, because God, the God of truth, will lead you there. Involve him in the process, which Solomon concludes with. But here's where these questions lead you. Now, this is not me. This is philosophy and psychology from 2,000 years ago, right? Plato, Aristotle dealt with these questions. These are not new questions. Solomon was 3,000 years ago, right? He was dealing with these same questions. There's nothing new under the sun. We're all asking, as human beings, creating God's image for his purpose and his glory. Without God, we're lost in this space of time and place, wondering what the purpose is. But we're not like, God, would you tell me? God, would you show me who I am, what I'm here for, and what the meaning of life is? So disconnected from God, we will all ask these questions, and it will lead us to one of these three places, right? This is not me. This is not pop psychology. Go ahead and show me the slide. This is where it will lead you. One is nihilism, the other is existentialism, the other is absurdism. Let me explain the three. Nihilism, it says there is no meaning of life. All three of them conclude everything's meaningless, by the way. Right? All three of them come to the same conclusion. I've searched through life. I've chased my dreams and found nothing. I got rich and there wasn't anything there. I got powerful. I found fame. It's just, and there wasn't anything there of meaning. And so the nihilist means he's kind of looking at the black hole there. There's no purpose, so why keep living? You fall into despair and hopelessness. Why live? The existentialist looks through the back window and keeps contemplating what has been and will always be again, wondering still what the purpose is, never really knowing, just living in limbo, sort of depressed. What do I do? Which leads to the third guy, which is, it's absurd if there's no meaning in life that we keep asking the question, what's the meaning of life? That's where the term comes from. It's coined 2,000 years ago, right? And it's like, that's absurd. Why do we keep asking the same stupid question when there's no answer to the question, right? Well, there's no answer inside the dark hole, our box of time and space. We have to ask God the purpose of our lives. Oh, the owner's manual, because he created it? Yeah, that's a good idea. You might want to think about that. Anyway, so it leads to, well, nothing matters, so let's just eat, drink, and be merry. Let's party, because we got one life. Let's make the most of it. Let's go out and go crazy. That's the absurdism, right? I have a fourth version, right? There we are without God. The fourth is, oh, wait, there's a front window. Why don't we turn our heads and look up and ask God, what is the purpose and what is our meaning of life? Why are we here? What do you hope that we accomplish? What do you want to do with me in my life? I mean, it gets very down to very practical. Me, you, your name. God knows you. God created you in his image, fearfully and wonderfully made, unique in all kinds of ways, crazy, weird, idiosyncratic, whatever. Be you. You're free to be you in Christ, number one. You don't have to conform to everybody else's standard and will. Be you. Now ask God, why did you create me the way you did? And what is it you want for me? What is the purpose of my life? So I don't mess it up. For me and for everybody else that's on the journey with me. Would you guide me? Would you lead me into truth and righteousness? Would you give me understanding of why you created me in this time, in this space, and what you want to do with me and through me? And so Solomon comes to some of these conclusions. We'll read his, and then we'll read Jesus here in just a minute. But the good news is that there's a front window. Yes, it's true, there's nothing new under the sun. What has been will always be, but there's hope. And there's a horizon, a new horizon, because God, our Creator, has purpose and created us for His pleasure and His will. And God is still on His throne. He knows who you are, He knows where you are, and He knows why you are. His purposes and His plans will prevail throughout all eternity. And so God is saying to all of us, would you come and jump on my bus? I know where I'm going. Would you come and join me because I know I made you? Would you come and join me because I am committed to not just give you an abundant life, but journeying with me through life, you're going to experience the best life you could ever possibly experience. Here's our problem. We don't trust Him sometimes all the time. And so it gets real easy for the enemy to come in and to sow some discontentment in my life when my life isn't going the way I planned, the way I dreamed, what I thought I wanted for my life, because God's walking me through a valley of the shadow of death, or something hits the fan, because we all live on a fallen planet with sin and sinners, and it's going to hit your doorstep, and then what do you do with that? And God's in the middle of those trials and those times with you to train, to teach, to encourage, to strengthen you, to give you understanding and help you deal with life. But when we're in the situation, we don't want to be in the situation. And so what happens easily when we're in difficult times or in a trial, or we made a mistake and we are suffering as a result of it, or somebody else hit your car and cost you money that you didn't have. Or when your body gets sick and you can't go to work and take care of the kids and make the bills, and what happens, and you get fired, and it's not because you did anything wrong, it's just because the system is such that, you see, and so what do you do when? Because at that moment is the moment you need to now engage what I'm going to share with you in just a second. You got to engage in that moment, because if you don't engage the truth, then the enemy will come in and sow discontent in your heart, jealousy, envy, and discontent. And then what's coming next is the carrot. And you will bite it, and you will chase your happiness. You will run to get out of the fire and the trial, and you won't learn from it, and you'll only add to your pain. You'll add misery to it. Don't do that. Right? That's what we've done all of our lives. That's what we've done for the last 4,000 years since the Garden of Eden, or 6,000 years, of her history recorded. Because we've always got short-sighted, and we've always bit the apple, and we've always tried to find our own solution to our own pain and self-medicate and not trust God. So I'm going to encourage you today to trust God. When the time comes, when the crunch comes, this is where we got to engage, and we're going to practice this as we end the service today. Mandy, I'm going to invite you to come on forward. But let's listen to a little bit of what Solomon says. And I don't have this for you on the board, Christy, so here's some of the other portions of Ecclesiastes. I know that there's nothing better for people than to try and be happy, just be happy, and to do good while they live. That each of them may eat and drink and find satisfaction in all their toil. This is a gift from God. Like, deal with it, accept reality, don't try and get out of it. Enjoy every day with God. Be good, do good, and enjoy your family, your friends. A person can do nothing better than to eat, drink, and find satisfaction in their toil. This, too, I see is from the hand of God. For without Him, who can enjoy anything, and who can eat and find pleasure in the daily mundane grind of life? This is a gift from God, that you might be able to enjoy the day no matter what the day brings, because God's with you. You still have a few family and friends that you haven't burnt, or, right, like in the process of, fleshing out on each other because we don't walk in the Spirit and we don't bless. And so sometimes we whittle that number of family and friends down a little bit. But even then, he says, try and enjoy the day. He goes on to say, no one can comprehend what goes on under the sun. Despite all our efforts to search it out, no one can discover its meaning. Even the wise claim they know, but they cannot really comprehend the truth of the matter. So we all have the same questions where we're not going to find the answers looking through the back window. The race is not to the swift or the battle to the strong, nor does food come to the wise or wealth to the brilliant or favor to the learned, but time and chance happen to us all. Now all has been heard. This is conclusion. Here is the conclusion of the matter. Fear God, trust him, obey him, keep his commandments, for this is your duty, the duty of mankind. For God will bring every deed into judgment, even every hidden thing, whether it's good or bad. He will be the judge of it all. You fear God, trust him, obey him, and enjoy the day, because he's with you in it. Here's what the International Children's Bible says about that. And everything has been heard. Here's my final advice. Honor God, obey his commands. This is the most important thing for people to do. God knows everything people do, even things that are done in secret. He knows all the good and bad, and he'll judge everything people do. The message says, fear God, do what he tells you. That's it. Eventually, God will bring everything that we do out into the open, even every hidden thing, and he will judge it. So what does Jesus have to say about this in conclusion? And Solomon didn't know Jesus, but he knew God. And the assumption throughout Ecclesiastes is that God is. He is our source. He is our king. His commandments are true and righteous. So he never left that perspective, but as he went out to search the world, and I say this because this is what we do. We always say, yeah, I believe in God, but I'm going to go out and search the world. I'm going to go out and see if there's anything else out there. And Solomon comes back to the conclusion. He says, you know what? It's all meaningless out there. It's a chasing after your tail, chasing the wind. There's nothing new under the sun. The best thing for Solomon in his day was to trust God, obey God, and enjoy your family, your friends, and your life. Now let's add Jesus to that, the new covenant. That was the old covenant, right? It was written down to remind us that we would be instructed by it so we don't keep chasing things that humankind has chased for thousands of years and not found meaning. Get out there apart from God, you will only end up like those three guys. No meaning, depression. I'm still asking the question, which is absurdity, or let's just party our brains out because we got one life and tomorrow we're going to die anyway. And don't worry about all the trial and all the investment that you've raised and the empires you've built. They're going to go to some fool that's going to exploit, waste it all. It's just like, don't get sucked in and stuck in that. And so here's what Jesus says. Seek first my kingdom and my righteousness, and all these things that you search for in the world, I will give them. It's like dominoes. If you would stay true to me, and you would seek my face, you would understand. Like, stay the course. Stay the course would be like one of the ways we say it in our vernacular, right? Don't get turned to the left or the right. Stay on the straight and narrow, because every day the enemy comes at you with distractions and detours, a fork in the road. Oh, this will make you happy. Oh, that'll make you happy. Oh, it's just like, no, here's what you need to do on those days when life gets tough. You need to stay the course and keep trusting that God has your best at heart. That he's with you in the middle of your trial. He'll bring you through it. You'll learn from it, and he will cause something good to take place as a result of it. Right? Romans 8:28. For those that love me and are called according to my purposes, stay the course. Here we are in February 2025. Where will you be in July? Where will you be in December? Where will you be a year from now? That doesn't mean you have to be in the same church. Understand me here. Are you walking with God? Are you pursuing his face? Are you trusting him? Because some of the most amazing stories and miracles and testimonies that inspire us are when people stay the course in their trial. And God comes through in miraculous ways that you would never have believed had you not stayed the course. Right? Like we always say around here for our culture, God's not playing hide and seek. He's not playing hard to get. He's just wanting to know, do I have a people that will trust me? And I'll just remind you, Israel, he tested them. He let them get hungry and thirsty in the desert. And it says why he let them get hungry and thirsty. Do you know the answer? He said, God allowed Israel to get to face hunger and thirst so that he might see what was in their heart. Do they just want to always run back to Egypt, to slavery and bondage? Is that their identity? Do they not know they're my children, that I love them? I guided them through the desert, through the Red Sea, pillar of fire, I fed them. I gave them water when they needed it. I have your best. I love you. You're my son. You're my daughter. You think I'm just going to leave you victim to the enemy? You think I'm going to leave you victim to a culture that's fallen in? I am in it with you, and I will lead you through it, and I will strengthen you, I will guide you, and I will bring you out of it. And in the midst of all of it, I will transform you into my likeness. This is my promise, and I give you my spirit as a guarantee, and I have the power to perform it. Do you not trust me with your life and your future and your dreams and your happiness? I hold it all in the palm of my hands, and I want to give it to you in its season, so that you can be strong and steadfast and not wavering. But will you trust me? And the only time we know that is in the tough times, right? When we say no to the temptation, when we say no, and so part of it is stay the course. The other part is, will I, when I'm lacking, because here's time out parentheses. I asked myself this morning and prayed through this, and I asked 3 people, I go, I want to be able to preach this in the deepest, darkest, poorest place in Africa or Asia or India or South America. I want to be able to preach this sermon. Are you content with what you have? Paul says, I've learned to be content in every situation, whether well-fed or starving, whether in jail or shipwrecked. It's like I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. I have all I need and all I ever wanted in him. I have heaven as icing on the cake, cherry on top. But he's with me and he's with us in the middle of this journey. And I don't know how you would do it without him, because the only thing that without him is going to lead to is more regret, more disillusionment, nihilism, absurdism, existentialism, no answers, meaningless. Get to the end, you'll wonder. Don't waste the rest of your life. God is the one who has the forward view. And he says, join me. I got plans. Let me speak into your life so that I can accomplish and fulfill what I created you for. And it comes through trust. It comes through fellowship, encouraging one another. Hey, we can do this. Let's keep our eyes fixed on Jesus, the author and perfecter of our faith. So here's our exercise, and then we're going to take communion. Here at Outlook, we take communion every week because the blood of Jesus has changed everything. The blood of Jesus takes us away from the back to the front window. The blood of Jesus now provides meaning to our life, purpose, direction, hope. And so here in a minute, at these 5 tables, we're going to just ask you to get up if you want to participate. Encourage you to do so, because Jesus said, remember me every time you gather. Remember the sacrifice, because not only did I give my blood for your forgiveness and eternity, but I gave my life so that we could do this together. Me and you, one, through life. I can provide strength and hope in the journey. And so, but right now, do this with me. Let's go ahead and stand, because we're going to move here in just a second. And I'm going to try to help you do what you should do every day that you face the temptation to be discontent with what God's poured into your life. Sure, we all don't have the same thing. As Solomon said, chance happens to us all. Fools get rich, and the righteous may suffer. I can't change it. They make the rules. I just got to live within them, right? You do too. So our journey and our struggle is not to let the enemy cause and create us to be discontent with what God has and is doing in our life. And we'll trust him through it. And so the answer to that is gratitude in the moment. So let's walk through this little exercise here together. I'm just going to pray for you, and